My name is Brian Whitesong, and I am interviewing Michael Garber on self-identity within being a twin. Michael, thank you for being here, taking time out of your schedule to talk to me. I wanted to interview you about how you perceive your self-identity within the context of you and your twin brother, Andrew. Throughout your childhood, I'm sure that you often found yourselves treated as a unit. And do you believe that your identity is largely based on you being a twin, or has there been a struggle for individuality?
Uh, Definitely, if like in respect to my childhood, growing up, we were seen as a unit. Whether it was one of us getting in trouble, both of us were sort of questioned about it as if we were both doing it, or our parents seemed a little upset with both of us. In school, I know a lot of times teachers sort of felt like putting us near each other was too much for the other kids because we would both like back up each other's points of view because we were pretty similar in terms of what we believed when we were like kids in class. Like in seventh grade, arguing for the same point or something like that. Um, so my brother's relationship with me, we definitely both fed off of each other and identified with each other. And the only sort of separation we felt were what we were both sort of told by our parents, as all kids are, like, good job, you're so good at this. One of us would be, like, I was always told that I was really good in school and good at math and English, and I was known as like the more, I guess, vocal twin, and Andrew was sort of the more laid back one who was good at artsier things, and so we were sort of pushed into the direction of one is artsy, one is intelligent in math and science and English. Um, but even though we had those sort of different avenues that we were supposed to both only be good at those specific avenues, people would kind of push us together as like they couldn't be I'm screwing this out, aren't
Oh,
I? Okay. People couldn't, like, we couldn't be around each other or it would be too much. It'd be like one unit acting together and it was too vocal, it was um, too much for everyone else. So it was beneficial to separate us because they saw us as like a team. So
do you think that going into adolescence that affected your view of your own self-identity in relationship to your brother? Do you think that throughout adolescence you were looking at maybe trying to break away from um, the conceptions that people were trying to sort of polarize you both into, or
yeah,
was there sort of like a camaraderie that came from that with you and your brother's identity?
yeah, that's a really good point. Basically, I always felt like I was struggling to identify myself as separate from him, even though he was my best friend and always has been. Um, but like, I guess it stemmed a lot from like I would do really well in school and wouldn't have to work or study as hard as my brother did, and then he, and then I would feel guilty because he wouldn't either get the same grade or get like a slightly lower grade, even though we're both equally intelligent. I think like that pressure early on got to him because he was clearly like very stressed out about stuff like that, and I would feel this guilt, um, like almost like I was responsible for his success or failure or his self esteem. Um, more so than I think other kids felt with their siblings. Like you feel more of like a camaraderie, and you feel more like this sense of like I guess competition. And we, for a very long time, we never got into a competition. It was more like we felt bad if the other one couldn't be just as good, you know?
Sure, sure. Imagine. One thing I do know that I wanted to ask you about, as much as you're comfortable about, is that I know that you and your brother are both gay. And at what point did you and your brother come out? And I know that the coming out process can be extremely important in a gay person's life, and at many times extremely difficult. And how was having your brother there to share in that, and having him to help shape both of your identities, as that being sort of a new part of both of your identities that was something you were experiencing at about maybe the same time,
Yeah.
coming to terms with?
Well, it's kind of weird because it was like growing up, I was always the more independent twin, or like the alpha twin. People always like, and it hurt my feelings because I'd be like, well, I'm not like trying to dominate my brother. I'm doing the best I can at whatever I'm asked to do. And if
Sure.
he's not doing better than I am, or if he's not being as vocal as I am about something, then it was almost like I was being labeled as like kind of like the one that's pushing him over or something like that. And I'm sure in a way, just him trying to like develop his own voice, it was hard for him to do that when being compared to me. I mean, even just feeling like that pity for him
Sure.
not being like me
Sure.
would, you know, deter his development into just being able to clearly say, like, this is how I feel about something, or do his best at whatever, like school or sports or something. I guess we both came out to our parents when we were 16, but he had come out to me about a year and a half before that. And then I never came out to him until a year after that, a little over a year after he came out to me. And so I guess those roles of like who's the alpha twin, who's not, kind of reversed in my head, because I saw him as being a lot stronger than me, and seeing him be so self-assured about like, I'm gay, I don't care that, you know, I'm telling you this, like I feel strong enough to be able to tell you this. And so I found that to be very admirable. And then it took me a year to be able to just tell my twin, who I knew was gay, that I was gay too. There was something weird about both of us being gay in my head. It was awkward or just weird for it to be that way. And so it took a long time, to come out to myself and be okay with it, and then to have to come out as a gay twin whose twin is gay. It was like
Sure.
another thing to sort of like have to get comfortable with.
How do people react when they find that you and your brother are gay? I'm sure that within being the context of twins, that's something that brings a whole completely different realm of thought into it. So could you expand a little bit further on how it was with your brother, and the sort of what you were met with from people as you being twins, while both of your identities were potentially being maybe challenged or put on a spotlight?
Well, it was weird. I mean, every time, even now when I come out, or when I like tell someone, oh yeah, my twin brother and his boyfriend, they're like, oh, your twin's gay too? And I'm like, yeah. People are always like, whoa, weird. And then I get the question, do you think you were both, so you think you both were like born that way, right? And of course I've always thought that I was born gay, and he thinks the same way of himself. But people don't ask me that until they find out that I have a twin who's also gay. So I don't know if people, yeah, obviously they had the question of, is it something you were born like, is it a way that you were, is that how you were when you were born? Like, that was natural for you to be gay.
Sure.
But they didn't feel comfortable, I guess, asking until they found out I had a twin, which I guess means they're thinking, okay, I guess that proves that it's sort of natural. Um, so, yeah, that's normally people's reaction, 9 times out of 10, uh, you know.
How do you see that play into going into adulthood and being out of the house, not living with your brother anymore? How do you find yourself in the context of your relationship with him going into adulthood? Uh, do you find it easier for yourself to think of yourself as more of an individual, or do you think you still think of yourself in the context always of being a twin, or
Well, I guess, you know, when before we came out, it seemed like everything was about us differentiating each other from differentiating ourselves as different, making ourselves seem
seem
different
different from each other?
from
Sure.
each other. Yeah, and then when we came out, it was sort of like this thing that we had to deal with, and since we were both going through it, I think our twinship bond kind of like we grew closer and we leaned on each other for support, which is something that was nice to have at the time. And while we've always been close, I think that was a moment where it really felt like we were twins. You know, we were really twins
Sure.
in everyone else's head before that, but in
Right.
our own heads, we're like, no, 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 we're different from each other. This was something that we felt bonded us as twins.
Sure.
And, we got a lot of attention for it too. And so, um, just even going out and meeting other gay people and socializing in a gay um, surrounding, it was almost like uncomfortable to do it without my brother.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure he felt the same way. And so it was really hard to try and make friends, and create my own sort of like life, especially in a, in the sense of being gay, just because after coming out, to um, build each other's esteem and make sure we're both emotionally okay, after all of that turmoil from coming out, it sort of bonded us together. And then we bonded too tightly where we relied on each other um, for support, to where we couldn't even function comfortably in a social setting without the other. And so it was almost like all our lives we were trying to push away from each other to sort of differentiate ourselves from the other. And then because we had to go through coming out and all of that together, that bonded us together. And then once all the dust settled from coming out, um, and we were faced with actual adulthood, um, you could feel that we were too close. Like, we could feel that we were too close. We could feel tension between trying to, you know, include the other in whatever, like, include Andrew in whatever I'm doing. I always felt like, I wanted him there, but he wasn't always wanting to do it or comfortable doing it, but he did it because he wanted to hang out with me, kind of thing, or whatever. And then I guess
So how did
it sort of came to a head, and it seemed like we ended up needing to be away from each other because the identities, our own personal identities, weren't forming, or were forming, and it was sort of, they were grading on each other.
What were some steps you took in order to sort of reclaim a more individual sense of identity, while still, honoring the brotherhood and friendship that you have with your brother? Was it hard to at times to claim onto your like own identity while still
Yeah,
sort of trying to honor the fact that the both of you had gone through so much together in similar
yeah.
ways?
Well, luckily for us, we got into this really big fight, and it had been over like a series of a year, where he was in a relationship, and at the time, me and his boyfriend, who is his current boyfriend now, didn't get along very well, and so that really was like the excuse, or it was almost like.
A way to give yourself more personal time
Well,
away?
a situation that I used to take out my irritation with the fact that clearly we were both starting to head in separate directions, and that was good for our personal identities. Um,
Seeing him as a partner maybe that like you wouldn't have taken
well, yeah,
is helps
because
you make.
yeah, well, because he was dating someone that I felt was almost taking my brother away from me, taking my time with my brother away from me, and sort of like seeing my brother get that close with someone else was seeing him separate from me. And so while I'm sure he wanted the personal identity much more than I did, we both were heading in two separate directions, which is whatever our journey to personal identity, that's what that's where those journeys were taking us, our separate journeys, and it was separate or becoming separate. And then we got into a fight over all of this stuff and didn't speak for almost a year. And within that year was where I really started to, within that year and the year that we were arguing over him and his boyfriend. Those 2 years were really where I was able to take my own time away from being a twin. And I went out and, made friends aside from my identity as his brother. And most of the people didn't know I was a twin, and I didn't really vocalize a lot about it, or I would say my brother or something, and no one really questioned anything. And I sort of took the time to figure out who I was away from all of this, like, twin stuff. And he was able to do the same thing. And so I think I guess the funniest part is, we spend all that time trying to differentiate from each other, and one was good at this, the other was good at that, and we were sort of like opposites or something. um, the coolest part about being away from each other was, I think it gave both of us the chance to test ourselves at what we're good at, you know and test even the things that we thought we weren't good at because the other one was sort of better. But it was almost like it was that our identity as twins was the thing that was pushing us away from trying what we thought we weren't good at. And so I think we both found out, more about our strengths and weaknesses as individuals, and don't see each other as twins anymore. Or, we don't rely on that as a way to see ourselves. Like that kind of,
You sort of separated your self
yeah.
identities as more of less than a unit and more of
Yeah,
just as brothers.
yeah, well, yeah, and there's not this lens that says, okay, how do you see yourself right here? And then
Right.
there's a lens going, well, make sure you remember that you're a twin and your twin's good at this and you're not. And that's like, this is no longer there, and you just kind of see what's there inside yourself instead of seeing it through the lens of make sure you remember, you know, your
Right.
twin's good at this, you're good at that. This thing went off. Okay. So I think it was good for us. I don't know how other twins deal with, like, being close and then needing to separate. We'll always be best friends, and we are still, but I think we're both very comfortable away from each other, which is a fear, and it's just a huge fear, I think, that at least me personally, I was not comfortable with and had in me.
The possibility of losing that twin.
Yeah, it wasn't even that. It's just like him not being around meant like so much of me was missing.
Sure.
And now it's like, okay, no, I know that's not true. Now my twin, it's like a less serious.
You don't see him as having to like complete your identity.
Yeah, it's not so deep, I guess, anymore. It's more of like, this is a person that gets me completely, that I get to have in my life, but he no longer defines me.
Sure.
Which is awesome, because I get to, whatever
That does
I'm
sound
excited or happy about, or sad or upset about, or, mildly intrigued about, whatever, I can share with him and know that he's hearing me for me. But that his opinion on whatever I'm talking about isn't going to define my opinion. So it's cool.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
That's great.